This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, February 5th, 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, last week, I still had hope that the Bills would go all the way. Obviously, those hopes are still alive, but we'll have to wait for another season in order to be fulfilled. If only the officials could stay out of the game. If only, too, the Bills played so well that no one call could impact the outcome of the game. But that was simply not the case this time. And so it goes. I now have no dog in the race, so my last hope for the season is that the commercials and halftime show are worth a flip. We'll see soon enough. Today's interview is part 2 of last week's conversation with Greg George. He and his team are crushing it at Peach Cobbler Factory, despite some of the burdens that have weighed heavily on Greg and his family that might have crushed others as opposed to breaking through and crushing the business instead. It's that part of the conversation that we'll dive into this week with greater detail, as Greg wishes to be the same kind of beacon for others that may still be trapped by the fog and haze that is addiction. His is a compelling story, and Greg is here with all the transparency possible to inspire just one by his story, or as many as may be moved to a brighter path ahead. Greg George returns with part 2 of his franchise journey in 2 minutes or less, so don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by Profit Keeper, the #1 franchise analytics platform for franchisors and franchisees. Trusted by more than 150 brands and 50,000 franchisees, Profit Keeper connects KPI, benchmark, and royalty data from your locations, groups, and territories. With Profit Keeper, you see stats in real time, presented simply and graphically. This makes it easy to identify actionable information for franchisees to help them drive profitability and brand growth at the unit level. No more wrangling data and guessing what works and what doesn't. To learn more and to get started, visit profitkeeper.com/franchise today. Greg George is a rainmaker, a natural-born salesman with franchise development as his area of expertise that until nearly 7 years ago was driven as much by demons as he was by the pursuit of his personal and professional goals. With the help of grit, determination, and his faith in God, today Greg lives life sharing how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. He is the self-proclaimed Mr. Positive with more than 300,000 Instagram followers inspired by his persona. He truly believes that positive thinking plus positive living equal positive results. Today, Greg is a family man who loves spending time with his 3 sons, his fiancée, and his burning desire to help others find their way as well as their true gifts. Greg George, back again today to walk us through it all in greater depth. Greg George, welcome back to Franchise Today.
Glad to be here, Stan.
Not every day I do 2-parters, Greg. Yours is a compelling story. We spent a good deal of time talking about you and your franchise career leading up to and including the current day with Peach Cobbler Factory, but there's another part of your story that we got to close to the end of our first segment, which brings us back together here today. Before we dive into that, let's do a quick recap, if you will, on who you are, what you've been doing for 35 years, and not item by item, but what led us to today, and a little recap on the Peach Cobbler Factory, and then we're going to flip to the B side and tell the rest of the story. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Well, Stan, I'm almost 63 years old. I think that I found myself in my late 50s through an occurrence in my life that changed my life, changed my family's life, and changed the life of a lot of other people. And we'll allude to that, I guess, during our conversation today. But let's just say I had an awakening, so to speak. I've been in franchising for many, many years. I've learned how to do things the right way, which has put me in the position that I happen to be in today as CEO and co-owner of the Peach Cobbler Factory. We are the fastest growing dessert chain in America. Since our last conversation, we were noted as 20 top brands to watch by Fast Casual magazine. That just came out on this last week, so I'm excited about that.
As well you should be. That's pretty exciting news. Well, all of that's great, and being the fastest growing is great too sometimes, but as we both know, being the fastest growing sometimes is not the same as being the fastest growing that's in operating conditions. So we covered that off on the last interview too, that the number of units open don't matter as much as the numbers produced by the open units, correct?
That is absolutely correct.
So we've got how many of those now that we've kind of hit on the numbers? We're at 100 plus. What's the closest accurate number?
112 locations. We just opened up in Denver, Colorado yesterday.
So 112 open and operating. And we've done this in the space of what period of time?
A little less than 3 years.
Which is pretty incredible. It would be pretty incredible for anyone to do. But as we talked about toward the end of the last interview, you've done all of this with a heavy weight on your back, haven't you?
Some would say that, yeah. You're right, Stan. Some would say I've definitely had some challenges.
In fact, you called it the family curse, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely a family curse.
So why don't you revisit that for us, and then we'll lay out for the audience what exactly we're hoping to accomplish here today. What do you say?
Sounds great with me. Well, to get right to it, the family curse is I've suffered most of my life from a drug and alcohol addiction, 45 years. From 12 to 46, I spent my life either high or drunk, basically every day of my life. My family was addicted. My father died in my arms at 50, an alcoholic. My grandfather died in a bar floor, an alcoholic at 50. We had quite the curse in the George family, for sure. And I almost lost my first son to 8-year opiate addiction, which is what made all this happen where I am today, quite frankly.
Well, tell us more.
Well, let's just say approximately 7 years ago, a little over 7.5 years ago, my son was struggling with an 8-year opiate addiction. He had 5 overdoses, 3 arrests. He was living in his car for 6 months, homeless. I'm a proud father, have 2 other sons. My kid is homeless and struggling with an opiate addiction that was unreal at the time. It destroyed our family, for sure.
And you at the time had your own problem, which did your children know at all what you were living with as you were raising them as a single parent?
Well, my children, they saw me drunk. They saw me high. I believe they thought it was just part of life. At the time, we were all addicted. But I definitely had a substance abuse, alcohol, marijuana issue, again, from the time I was 12 years old till later in life. But it was definitely present in our home at all times. And it's just a lifestyle we lived. And a lot of people live this kind of lifestyle. It's not just drug addicts and drunks. It's business people. It's doctors. It's lawyers. It's people like you and I that struggle.
I think it was this past week I heard about an airline pilot being pulled out of the cockpit 2 times the limit, and he was getting ready to fly a plane.
Yes, sir. Addiction is not... Addiction is everywhere. It attacks families. It attacks men. It attacks women. It attacks everybody. There's a lot of us that don't overcome it, unfortunately.
Well, I think, too, that we see or we hear a lot about it in the world of athletics, in the world of entertainment, and I think in business, in the world of high-performing professionals. So making no excuses, it would seem to me, though, that some of the high pressure of high producers may come with a price. What truth is there in that?
Absolutely. I use alcohol and drugs to kill the pain, to kill the daily stress of being, what you said, a high performer. I've always been successful. I was a high-functioning alcoholic and drug addict, the truth of the matter is. And, I would get higher drunk when there was good times, and I would get higher drunk when there was bad times.
And then tell us about what happened with your oldest son, Greg, that kind of put the brakes on all of this and had the epiphany that you had.
Well, by the grace of God, 7 years and 3 months ago, my son hit his bottom. He had crashed a vehicle into a building at 8 o'clock in the morning, was arrested. He spent 56 days in jail, and things were not looking good for him. And through a series of events, I was able to get him in the right place, a faith-based treatment center. When I dropped him off, he weighed 125 pounds soaking wet. I had a backpack. I told him I loved him. I told him I would be there for him. And I'll never forget, it was midnight when I dropped him off fresh out of jail, and I drove 2 hours home, and I got home and I drank a fifth of Apple Crown Royal, and I stayed drunk for 3 months while my son was away because I didn't know how to cope. And that's what I did. And then, 3 months later, that's when my life changed. Scared to death. I got as drunk and as high as I've ever been in my entire life. That night, before I was to pick up my son, I drove to the treatment center that morning, half drunk. I should have got a DUI probably, but I didn't. And I pulled up to the treatment center. I was standing at the door, and the man was dressed fancy. He had on a bomber jacket and aviator glasses, the kind of stuff I would wear. And I said to myself, that guy's not from here. He's from Los Angeles. Has to be. And I put my head down, prayed a little bit, and started walking towards the door, and the man opened the door for me, and I pushed my aviator glasses down and looked at the guy, and tears started rolling down my eyes, and I said, "Son, is that you?" He said, "Yeah, Dad, it's me." And that person was my son. He was unrecognizable. He weighed almost 200 pounds. I did not recognize him. I was in shock. He said, "Dad, let's get the hell out of here." And I said, "No, not yet." I grabbed him by the hand. We walked into the treatment center. There was about 70 drug addicts and drunks in there. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. Something came over me to speak to these people. I told them my story. I told them I did not recognize my son who was standing next to me. I told them I'd been high or drunk every day since I was 12 years old. I told them my dad died in my arms. My grandfather died in the bar. I walked around the room with tears in my eyes, and they had tears in their eyes. And I walked back up front and said, "I got some great news for you. When my son and I walk out of this treatment center today, we're going to go to 90 NA meetings 90 days in a row." And I didn't even really know what NA was, Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't know at the time. And then I walked around the room and looked at every man in that treatment center, and we were all in tears. And I came back up and said, "But I've got some really great news. When I walk out of this treatment center today, March 2nd, I will never take another drink or use drugs as long as I'm alive." And I grabbed my son by the hand, and we walked out of the treatment center without a goodbye. And I'm proud to tell you that in just a few weeks, I will be 7 years clean and sober. It's an absolute miracle. I broke the family curse. My son today is 7 years and 3 months clean and sober. My son today went from being homeless to a high-level executive in my company today, and he and I help people. I speak in churches and prisons and schools and business events. I personally put 43 people in treatment centers that I did not know. They don't know who paid for it. They don't even know how they got there, but all 43 are clean and sober today. I found my gift, Stan.
Well, and you're sharing it here, Greg. I've heard it said, and I've said it in our last episode, that every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. And yours is quite bright with what you're doing, both in service to others that may be inflicted with the pain that you've cut through, and as well with growing a business that's providing opportunities and jobs. So we're going to take a quick break, Greg, and we're going to come back on the other side, and we're going to recapture all of that and what it is that you may be able to do to help others that are still struggling too, functionally, but struggling nonetheless. We're talking today with Greg George, franchise founder, CEO, and partner of Peach Cobbler Factory, and we're coming back with much more, so don't go away.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And we continue the conversation today with Greg George, franchise founder, CEO, and partner in the Peach Cobbler Factory. So, Greg, they say sometimes that the world is black and white. I always say that there's gray and shades of gray, but it would appear that in your world, a switch got flipped. It's like the pendulum never stops in the middle. All kinds of wonderful things have happened in your world, including a partner named Larry Johnston. Tell us about Larry.
Oh, man. Larry Johnson, what can I say? Number one, he was a gift from above. Number two, he's my best friend. He's my mentor. He's my business partner. He's guided me. He's given me a free MBA. I remember before Larry and I became partners, I was doing my due diligence on him, and one of my good friends said, Greg, the best gift here is you're going to get a free MBA out of this guy. I just learned that Larry had really done two main things in his life. One was a very high-level executive at the largest company in America in the 80s in General Electric, worked directly under Jack Welch. And the day that Jack Welch retired from GE, Larry became chairman and CEO of Albertsons grocery store chain, today a $40 billion company. And he and I met by fate. You wouldn't think a man of his stature would seek out a man of my stature and my history. But we met by chance on social media. His story's well known, but he contacted me actually on Facebook after I friended him, after I heard some great things about him, and he invited me to his home down in South Florida, sizing me up, and we talked people stuff, not business stuff, and I was there to meet a great guy, but he was there just to really, I believe at the time, size me up. And I left after a couple of days visiting with him. And a few short months into the Peach Cobbler business, I found out that my partners, the original founders, we just thought differently. They were great people. I have nothing derogatory to say about them, but I had a different vision. And what happened was, after just a few short months after meeting Larry, he called me up on the phone one day, and, out of the blue, it was shocking, but he called and said, hey, I've done this, and here's where I am in life, and I like you a lot. I love what you're doing. I love what you've overcome. Why don't you make me the chairman of this company, and let's build the largest dessert company in the world together? And it took me like 60 seconds to say yes. And within 72 hours, he and I became business partners, and we've been together now almost 3 years. We speak daily. He advises me on all important matters. He's the best man I've ever known. He's just been something out of this world. It's just not normal for a Fortune 50 CEO to call former drunk and drug addict and say, hey, I want to be in business with you. I'm so proud of the fact that he chose me and I chose him.
Do you suppose, Greg, that there's a parallel that I can draw between what he did with you and what you've done with others? You said you've helped 43 people who don't even know who you are get clean and sober, that you've put them into rehab. Do you suppose that he maybe groomed you to do the same? Was he on a mission when he found you?
I believe so. I believe more than anything, and I tell him all the time, you got in business with me because of me, not the business. I believe he wanted to help me because he knows I like helping other people. I don't know that many people, Stan, to be honest with you. I'm a quiet man, but I have no idea how I have over 300,000 Instagram followers on social media, 36,000 Facebook friends. I mean, I have no idea. I don't know any of these people. So I think the words got out that I'm a pretty decent guy, and one person's told somebody else, hey, you got to follow this guy. He's pretty interesting. He's got tattoos. He wears crazy fancy clothes. He does yoga. He's eccentric. I've been told by some people I'm a mix between Ray Kroc, Willy Wonka, and Colonel Sanders all rolled into one. And that it sounds about right to me.
That's not a bad combination, Greg.
Yeah, I hope I can live up to just one of those guys.
You could be the compilation of a whole lot worse than that.
Absolutely.
So what do you think Larry's long-term plan is? Is it to just see that you get this thing right on course, or is he in for the long haul?
He's in for the long haul. Our goal is to build the largest dessert company in the world. We've actually extended that into the food business now. We've just introduced literally this month a new line of savory cobblers, chicken, turkey, Italian beef, and kind of we see there's a little space in between Dairy Queen and Cracker Barrel, and we want to improve our sales by offering a lunch and dinner option that we've not had since this brand was founded in 2013. And we like taking risk, and things are going very well with our new lunch and dinner product. So we believe that we will be the largest dessert chain in America. There's bigger companies, better companies. Crumble Cookies, an incredible brand, getting ready to sell for $2 billion. They have almost 7 years time more than we do. So we're on pace. Let's just say that.
So Greg, what's your message to the audience who is comprised of people that are those high producers that we talked about earlier, many of whom we all know at IFA and places that we go, we're known to all have a good time and probably overdo it more times per year than we should. What's your message, though, to those who don't know that they're in more trouble than they realize?
Well, my message is that there's hope. Number one, a lot of us, myself included, we just never can or could admit that we're powerless. A lot of us business people are functioning alcoholics or drug addicts. I know plenty of doctors and lawyers and business people that they live one heck of a life. They're hitting the cocktails when they get off work, late at night, doing different things. And there's hope for anybody. If I was the worst, and if I can do it, anybody can do it. And there's help out there. There's people like me that I thrive on helping people that are lost, that maybe just are looking to find their way, but they're too embarrassed to admit maybe they have a drinking problem. And if any of your listeners out there today have asked themselves, am I an alcoholic? They probably are. Am I a drug addict? They probably are. And they just need somebody to lift them up, in my opinion. Somebody to guide them. They don't have to run off to a treatment center. They don't have to resign from their position. They don't have to divorce their wives. They just need to speak to people like me that can guide them in the right direction. I didn't go to treatment to get clean and sober. I did it on my will. My will is what got me, my perseverance, my discipline, and my willingness and want to be a better human being, to be a better father, to be a better business person, to be a better, I'm engaged to be married. I want to be a better husband. And now I have all those things because of my discipline, because I've lost the desire to drink, drug, or use any kind of illicit substance.
Have you lost it or have you replaced it?
I've lost it.
Because it seems to me that when you lose something, it leaves a hole, but it sounds to me like your hole got filled by something other.
Well, it did get other people. I'll admit that. It did get filled by a purpose in my career. I'm a hard worker. Probably would say or admit to anybody I'm a workaholic, but I do have balance in my life today. And I owe it all to the man upstairs, and I owe it all to just wanting to be a better human being and wanting to help other people. I've done so many things to help people. I'm not beating my chest at all, but I think I told you on the last call possibly that practically every day I live in South Florida. I go out and I find homeless people and I give them sleeping bags. I try to give away 5 sleeping bags with food every day. And I talk to these, mostly men. What got you here? Why are you here? And they tell me, and some of them are businessmen, or they got a divorce, or they lost their house. There's a lot of reasons people go homeless. But I know what my gift is. It's to help people. It's not to make money. It's to help people. It's to show my children how to live a solid life. And so far, so good. The last 7 years.
Well, and two, they've seen the other side of the coin, haven't they? So they've not only seen, but gotten to experience the difference between the world for them that was versus the world that today is. And a great testament to your partner that Larry allows you not just the time to grow and be the steward of the business, but to have the time to reach out and help others along the way, which again is a hats off to a fine person for doing that.
Well, thank you. Greg,
what have I not asked you today in conclusion before I ask for contact info? What have I not asked that you might think would have been appropriate for me to put out there on the table?
Well, truthfully, I hope that your podcast, the reason why I accepted your invitation, I hope that there's just one listener out there that is struggling, that maybe will take a chance, maybe reach out to me. Any of your listeners, they can follow me on Instagram. It is I am Mr. Positive. I am Mr. Positive. Follow me on Instagram or look me up on LinkedIn. Send me a message if you're struggling, and I will give you my words of wisdom because I certainly have them. I have the history of overcoming my demons. And that's all. That's what I want. That's what I want to do here. Is I want to help just one person. And if 1,000 call, I'll see to it that 1,000 get help. But if just one person can turn their life around, this has made this podcast very worthwhile, Stan. And I really am thankful that you brought me on.
Well, it's been a pleasure to get to know you better, Greg, and to learn more about the sincerity that's at the root of who you are and the work that you're doing. And for me to give the time to the audience is small price to pay to deliver such a large message. To be fair and equitable to the Peach Cobbler Factory side of the time spent together on these 2 episodes, one more time, how about contact info for those who are interested in learning more about the business as well?
They can just simply go to www.peachcobblerfactory.com or follow us on Instagram or Facebook or email franchise@peachcobblerfactory.com.
Well, all well and good, my friend, and I really appreciate you having the candor, the openness, the transparency to do the work that you're doing and growing that business, which is on a trajectory to greatness, it seems, and you as a human being on the same track, reaching out to your peers, trying to do the same kind of thing for them that others have done for you. It's been a real pleasure, Greg, and I thank you again for spending time with us here on Franchise Today. Greg George, franchise founder, CEO, and partner in the Peach Cobbler Factory. Thanks again.
Thank you, Stan.
Well, that's a wrap for today. Next week, we're at IFA in Las Vegas, but we'll be back on February 19th when we're joined by Franworth founder and CEO John Rocci. As founder and CEO of Franworth, John and his partners, including former NFL icon Drew Brees, hold equity positions in a cross-section of brands, including Sugaring LA, Milkshake Factory, Health Source, Mosquito Nix, Garage Kings, and Degree Wellness. So you don't want to miss this one. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today. Or, as always, download episodes on demand at blogtalkradio.com